Sunday night, 9 o'clock, postcast behind the paywall. We ought to start going live. Can be appointment television like the old days, right? Like something's coming on, 9 o'clock, Sunday night. You should be here.
I'll be honest with you. I've been wondering why you set this. I mean, I guess it's setting the scene, but I'm pretty sure we're the only podcast in the world that sets the scene of when we're recording.
Yes, literally. Well, but I think that's important because we're talking about news that happens on a certain date. So maybe. I think it's just habit of introducing something. I need to say the time and the date. As we do every week, we walk through the print edition. And I don't know if I've said this since we've been recording these, which has only been 2 weeks, but I love the fact that we have a print newspaper in Jackson. We've had it for now, going on 3 years, 2.5 years. Well,
we're right at 2.5 years now.
Yeah, but this is good. It's good to have something.
One that actually covers locally on the regular.
Yeah, yes. So, first story on the front page that we are going to talk about. It's not the city stoplights to get new technology, which I'm sort of curious about that, but if we have time, we can get into it. It is the city council approving a homeless shelter for the 12th time? 15th time? How many? What are we on? What number are we on?
It's at least second.
Only 2. Okay.
It's at least second. We may be as many as 4 by now. Because there have been times in the last 5. I mean, this started in the week before Christmas of 2020 with the tragic death. But that was also no, it was at the very beginning of the previous one. But I haven't been covering every meeting of city council in that time. So there may have been some, but I know definitely in this city council, since they all were elected summer of 23, second time they've approved it.
Okay, so for this, and I kind of want to talk about what's happened since last summer, because everything else was like this slow build, under the radar, 3-year process, and then all of a sudden everybody flips out like a month out from this stuff being approved.
Right.
Roughly a month. I know there was probably a little bit longer than that, but it was, compared to the 3 years leading up to it, it was a very short amount of time when everybody got their feathers ruffled and all this stuff started shifting and changing. So May or June of 2024, right? That's when everything started to shift and change for the homeless shelter, correct? Right around budget season.
Yeah. In April of 23, they had the groundbreaking. Ceremonial groundbreaking, and then nothing happened for over a year because we were all like, what's going on with it?
Is this Hub City Central or homeless shelter?
Homeless shelter.
Sorry, clarification.
Well, wait, never mind.
Keep going.
Yeah, because we're getting into 2 totally different legislative bodies there.
I was just making a joke.
Yeah, so 2023, they have the groundbreaking. And then we go a little more than a year. And then about April 24, we start to hear some okay, there's about to be some stuff happening with it. Because it's getting into budget season. They're talking about it seriously in the budget. And we're going to fund this. We're going to build this. And it's going to look like this. And it's going to have these features. And when it's done, we're going to turn the keys over to Tennessee Homeless Solutions. And they're going to help about 20 homeless men every 90 days. I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but get back on their feet. And if they need to learn a trade or something, they'll learn a trade. If they need to wean themselves off of an addiction, they'll try to do that too. But at the same time, it's not a shelter where you got to be clean to be a part of it. You just can't use while you're on the premises. So, and then there was a meeting last year of downtown business owners where they were hearing this and they had some questions. They had some concerns. And so Mayor Conger and most of his leadership crew all met in this location with all these business owners. And everybody came away with a pretty positive, I guess, outlook on the meeting. And everybody's like, okay, all right, this is something we can do. And then by the time we get to the wow, Gracie,
perfect.
Yeah, just right in the way. Just right in the way.
That's what I was waiting on.
2 weeks later, we have an agenda review meeting for the June meeting, and Larry Lowrance and Candace Busby, which, by the way, those districts do not come anywhere close to where this homeless shelter is going to be, have these concerns. And they weren't the only ones, but they were the two loudest ones during the meeting. Had these concerns. And then they're like, hey, let's back up. Can we afford this? Do we need to put it here? Blah, blah, blah. And so that kind of put things on hold. And behind the scenes, there was some backtracking and pivoting, massive pivot that we didn't even know about until September, where they totally pull out a project to build a homeless shelter. And they say, oh, the owners of Airways Motel, they're willing to sell their building. So if that works, we'll put it there. Which it was going to be considerably further away from like RISA and Area Relief Ministries and Community Cafe, where a lot of resources are for the unhoused population of Jackson. But Mayor Conger had a plan where twice a day there'd be a JTA bus, Jackson Transit Authority bus, that would take a bus load of them from downtown, drop them off. They could go run their errands, get their meals, whatever, do whatever else they needed to do. And then later in the day, there'd be a second one. They'd be able to come back. They had to go through 3 months of due diligence to make sure that would work. And some stuff that they found in the motel that was going to take a lot of work, a lot of expense. And the way I understand it, the owner of the motel had upped his price because he bought it last summer. He was pretty much asking for double what he paid 6 months earlier. And the city pretty much said, okay, we're going to pay you double. You need to fix this, and gave a whole list of things to do. Due diligence ended on December 31st. Very few, if any, of those items were done. So they were done at that point. A couple weeks later, they have come back and said, okay, the city council or Mayor Conger brings to the city council when they're having that whole discussion about the bond issue. And they dwindled it from 36 million to 26 million. And in that 26 million, they said, we're going to have 600,000 that we're going to give to Tennessee Homeless Solutions to purchase. And I never can remember what that place used to be, but it's like the old secondhand furniture store at the corner of Old Hickory and Hollywood.
Old Hickory and Holly.
Yeah.
They're gonna put it over there.
Well, that's where they were going to put it.
Okay.
This is Plan C.
Yes. Okay.
So that didn't happen. Another buyer came in, bought it out from under Tennessee Homeless Solutions' nose, and pretty much ended that discussion. And so they had Plan D, and honestly, it's a better location. It's closer. It's downtown. It's in an area where all the neighbors are okay with it. So you're not going to get a lot of we don't want a homeless shelter next to us, that kind of talk. And it's in the old. I essentially give the location away at the end of the story. An old cosmetology school that's close to the library, and like Max Pest Control, close to Royal Street. That's where it's going to be. And so, so this week they're going to go looking through it. The CRA and THS, Tennessee Homeless Solutions Community Redevelopment Agency, make sure everything's good to go, and yeah, hopefully by this winter there will be a new homeless shelter in Jackson.
So is it going to house the same amount of people that the original was going to house? Same setup, kind of the 90-day rotating thing, wraparound support. Okay, that's awesome. And the original price tag to build the original shelter was what? What did it get up to? $3 million? Is that too? Am I thinking too high?
$4 million is. It keeps ringing in my mind. I think 2.4 is what the city was going to pay. But Lauren Kirk, when she was still with the city, had gotten a grant. I think the total was going to be about 3.7. It's just that the city's part was 2.4. 2.4. I could be $100,000 off one way or the other on both of those numbers,
but you're looking at a few million, a couple million to 3 million. And what are they getting this for now?
600,000. Well, the city's part.
The city's part. Okay.
Right.
So I think there's probably I've been really trying to practice this new term of mine. Have you ever heard of the term non-dualistic thinking, where like these two things can be simultaneously true at the same time, even though they might look like they're opposing each other, but they can both
Yeah.
actually be true? Okay, so really been trying to work on that personally, like myself, the last few months. And so this is one of those situations that I think like because it seemed to be very much last summer a money issue, though part of me thinks it was more of like a class issue, but I think it was used as a money issue to like really push the public to sort of sway or the council or whatever. That being said, if it was a money saving issue and the place is going to provide the same supports that the original place was going to provide, that seems like a win for the city.
Oh, yeah. Last summer's discussion started with, I don't want to say class but since that's the word you use, we'll go with it, class. But then it turned into a money discussion when they saw, oh, we're not paying for resurfacing any roads, but we're going to put 2.7 or 2.4 million toward this homeless shelter. What's up with that? So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No. Yeah, so I think that's a good thing. So this is one thing that can be true. This is good. It saves the city money. It satisfies some taxpayers. But then on the other hand, I still really think when I say we, I just mean collectively as a community, we didn't treat vulnerable people very well. We seem to have used them as pawns or tossed them around back and forth for like because we don't want them over here, we don't want them over here, so we're going to buy this, we're going to do that, and like I just have a hard time with people treating people like that in a way. So I know it's a systematic thing. I don't think it's anything personal. I don't think there's any one person. I mean, I know there were vocal people about it, but it's just more of a systematic issue that's kind of disappointing from the outside. But that being said, if this can get done the right way and it's cheaper, then maybe everybody wins just a year later.
Yeah. One thing that I will say, I guess, kind of from the side of the people who wanted it moved was, and I forget what the numbers were, it was just a casual conversation with one of the business owners downtown. And they said, Brandon, I saw a stat that said there are, I think, 150 homeless shelters like this across the country. 1,450. How many of them are inside the city limits of the city that they're helping? About 50. And that person said, so if 1,400 of them can be outside city limits, why can't ours? Well, I kind of see what you're saying there. But if all the resources are in downtown, why would you force those people to have to figure out a way to get from point A to point B when point A doesn't have to be as far away as y'all want it to be? So,
did your mom ever say to you, Brandon, if all your friends were jumping off a bridge, would you jump off too? She ever say that?
yeah, she did say that.
Something like that. Yeah. So just because 1,400 other homeless shelters are doing something doesn't mean we have to do it also.
And one time, as a smart aleck remark back to my mother, I said, how tall is the bridge?
You would.
She was not in a good mood that day.
I bet you had some sharp, dry wit about you as a punk teenage boy.
Yeah, I wasn't even a punk teenage boy. I think I was like 8 or 9.
You're a punk prepubescent adolescent is what you were. Well, so this seems like a happy ending if this doesn't get kicked down the road again, but hopefully all this can, play out the right way and we can get people who need like services and shelter some of that before it gets too
well. I doubt very seriously this thing's going to get kicked anymore. I mean, because the city, other than putting $600,000 to it, the city is out of it now. This is now the CRA and the Community Redevelopment Agency and Tennessee Homeless Solutions. Who's in charge? Who's the chair of the board for the CRA? Vicki Lake. Besides Amy McDonald, who is the executive director of Tennessee Homeless Solutions, who is the one person in all of rural West Tennessee who tries to do as much as she can every year to help the homeless people. Vicki Lake. So, kind of like Great Wolf Lodge, we're not across the goal line, but we had a big gain down the field this past week.
What an interesting thing to pull in there. I mean, I know the comparison completely works, but oh my, like two totally different,
Kyle
like
Spurgeon usually uses that metaphor for
buildings
Great Wolf
and
Lodge, so I stole
crowds
that
and
from him.
people those buildings will service, all of that.
Yeah.
Sort of adjacent to a homeless population situation, possibly could be the next story that we'll talk about, and that's the Scarlet Rope Project. I feel like Scarlet Rope, like that's something that even before I knew exactly what it was, I had heard it multiple times, like,
Hmm.
over the last decade or so. And then I got to help interview, I believe is it Julianne
Yeah,
Scott,
Jelan.
when I was on with Chuck a couple summers ago. And that's when I really
She was on
found
with
out.
us on the Shields report too.
Well, I don't think I was there that day.
You were.
Was I?
It was me, you, Jelan, and actually Allison, their communications rep.
That's right. That's right. Okay, okay, okay. All right. Yes. Well, and I apologize for forgetting that. I remember the other one
It's
because
fine. I'm
I
not
think
bitter.
she came on just after that Jim Caviezel movie had come out. Like the one the trafficking movie from two
Oh,
summers
yeah.
ago. Not Passion of the Christ. No, no,
I was going to
no.
say,
This is
that
the
was on the radio 20 years ago.
no, no, yeah. So it was yeah, the trafficking movie. And so I just remember that being part of the conversation.
Yeah.
No, trafficking is something like anything that's been, again, this is this non dualistic thinking, like anything that's been out in the news a lot has, I don't want to say it's been sensationalized, but anything that's put on a big screen for something isn't entirely ever accurate. And so I think the realities of what trafficked people go through aren't nearly maybe as cinematic or as like whatever Hollywood's going to put on that. They're not trying to like gloss it up or anything, but I just think the day to day work of something like the Scarlet Rope Project is not nearly as I don't use the word glamorous because I don't think detectives
Dramatic.
busting these dramatic, right? It's just probably more of just I can imagine it's incredibly hard work that takes an incredible amount of perseverance just day after day after day. Is that
Right.
kind of what you got from interviewing her or
Yeah.
knowing her over the
Yeah.
years?
The And yeah, I was in kind of and I'm sorry for interrupting you now because I'd like to hear just kind of what you learned during that interview that Chuck was involved in about Scarlet Rope because I mean we both know what it's for, what it's about, what they're doing, their objective, and but a lot of the times when I'm talking with Jillian or Ashley, the conversation is about yeah, this is what we're trying to do. We got Crawl Fest coming up, in a few weeks, which I'm going to be doing that story because I got that. I think it's coming up to Easter weekend actually, or Brewfest or whatever other fundraiser we got coming up. So it's kind of in that context I'm usually having
Right.
these conversations. So I was glad to be able to sit down with Joanne and Miss Curry, Debbie Curry, who got the whole thing started, and hear some of these stories about. I mean, there were some stories that they were telling that I couldn't put in my story, and I can't talk about here on this thing. Where it's just like, um, if and not to unnecessarily interject my faith into this conversation, but they make no effort to hide the fact that they are Christians and they feel like they're called by Christ Himself to do this work. So, and if so, as I'm talking to them, I'm hearing these stories. There were some stories there about hearing from somebody who was finally ready to take that step, and they got brave enough to make that call. I'm ready to get out. Please help me. My guy is off getting coffee. I've got 10 minutes. Can you please come get me, or something like that? And you hear the stories of how some of these women got out, and you're like, there's no way that doesn't happen without some kind of divine intervention going on. And so I was glad to put some of that stuff into the story, but I really only scratched the surface from the stuff that I heard about. Um, because I mean, when you think about we are a town of 70,000, a county of 100,000, with all these not 5-star hotels sitting around the interstate. There's a lot of opportunity for this stuff to go on just in that mo
Mm-hmm.
of it happening. So there's a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of need for this kind of work to happen. But they just kind of like what you said. Every day is one of these dramatic days where it's like, oh yeah, this is ripped straight from a movie script. There's a lot of days where, hey, let's go to the hotel this evening, let's grill burgers, and let's make some contacts. Let's reach out, let's be friends, let's gain some trust, so that at some point they will make that call. I'm ready to go. How are you going to get me out of here? What do I need to do?
And what I mean, and that's one of those things that I think people don't necessarily like to hear it, but we'll go see a movie about it if we can keep it at arm's length. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think we like to think about it happening within our community. So that's why something like Scarlet Rope is so necessary, because there's a, Jackson, I don't know, 70,000 people, something like that, but it still feels very small, and everybody knows everybody, it seems like. And so having, being able to reach out for help can be really hard in those situations. And some things that I took away from that interview is 2 years ago. So some of it's kind of cloudy.
Right.
I think when we think of trafficking a lot, we automatically think of something of a sexual nature. And that's not always the case, if I remember the interview correctly. And, from what Miss Stone was saying, what really stuck with me was the fact of how long some of these processes are with these women. It can be
Mm-hmm.
years, right? Like they could kind of be in and out. They'll lose contact with them for a few months, and then they'll kind of come back in and get back in contact with them. And sometimes the process literally takes years. And
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody's situation is different, and people who haven't been in an abusive situation or in a situation where they're being trafficked, we think, well, why don't they just leave? And it's just never. It's not nearly that easy. So hats off to Scarlet Rope and what they're doing. And I just want to say something about the Currys, both of them,
Yeah.
Dean and Debbie. Like they're very, like, they are great people doing a lot of really good things in Jackson. When I taught at USJ years ago, I think their daughters were there, and I met them then, and like I just from a distance see the things that they're doing in the community, and they're solid, good people. So it's good that we have. It's very good that we have Scarlet Rope, and it's being supported like it is.
And it just so happened that last week's edition of the Post had a story about Doctor,
That's what made me.
as
Yeah.
he's retiring from West Tennessee Healthcare, and he's retiring from the hospital, from the surgery he's been performing. He said, "Yeah, we're about to celebrate 75 years of the hospital. I've been here for nearly half of that." I think he was coming up on 35 years when he retired. His last day was, I think, March 20, maybe one day the following week. But he's going to Samaritan's Purse now, which is, if you're not familiar with, I think that, forgive me if I got the name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Samaritan's Purse, where it's doctors who either retire or they go and leave from their job for a while to go do mission work for this nonprofit Samaritan's Purse, where they're going to dangerous parts of Africa and Asia and South America, getting healthcare to the people who wouldn't otherwise have it. So, yeah, the Curry family definitely seem to be among some of the more Christ-like people around Jackson, Madison County.
Yeah, I just think, like, they're so often. I think the entertaining things to talk about are like, why did the homeless shelter get kicked down the road for 4 different times, or whatever budget concerns are. But focusing on people who do really good work for other people in the community who just don't have those opportunities or the same advantages as everyone else. Like CRA, same way, Tennessee Homeless Solutions, Scarlet Rope, these nonprofits that, they're not like busting out with money, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
nonprofits, right? I mean, they're working their tails off to do good things for people who need good things done for them. And
Yeah.
I can't say enough about the amount. It wasn't until we did the radio show I didn't realize how many nonprofits we had, and how many of those nonprofits are really like sort of doing, I shouldn't say the churches, I don't know, like just doing the
No, they
work
are.
of these gaps that the government doesn't fill, religious establishments don't fill. So somebody's got to catch this stuff. And we've got a lot of good people working really hard to do that.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of months ago, I wrote the story or wrote the column like, hey, all y'all that are unhappy about the city trying to seemingly get into the business of helping homeless people. Well, that church that you're probably going to go to Sunday morning, that's the one who God told to help the homeless. He didn't say anything to the municipalities. Same thing about helping the enslaved, and the orphans, and the widows, and all these different people. At no point did he say, you know what, government needs to take care of those people. No,
I
his
think the
people.
loudest narratives that, and this is probably an unfair statement, but I think sometimes the loudest narratives that come out of church are sort of the narratives that are the opposite of what you just said. Kind of like we get hung up on the budget stuff or the whatever in the political world. I think
Right.
sometimes churches can get hung up on whatever gets the easiest response back from a congregation. And helping homeless people probably doesn't get a great, that's one of those where people kind of look down or look to the side or like let's get through this because I don't really want to do that necessarily. So now I can
And
amen, like not committing adultery. I can amen that. I can amen, some other things. But
right to yeah, there. When we hear in the public sphere, in public conversation, when we hear our Christian brethren and our leaders speak out against the things that need to be spoken out, and I'm not saying that they don't need to be spoken out against or spoken against, whatever, but certain things get spoken against a lot. Meanwhile, I'm 44 years old, weighing 320 pounds at 5'9", 5 feet 9 inches tall, and I think I've heard maybe 2 sermons on gluttony.
pick and choose.
And I'm not an anomaly in the Southern Baptist Church.
It's all those potlucks. Y'all still have potlucks? We had potlucks when
Yeah.
I grew up at Calvary.
Oh yeah.
Just casseroles sitting in butter with Ritz crackers crumbled on top.
Then you go get some banana pudding.
Yes. Hot. We had chocolate pie too, quite a bit.
Chocolate pie, washed all down with sweet tea.
And then a shot of insulin. State legislators meet with constituents. So this is the third story on the front page. But if you look here and you read it, it's not the story. It's not the story. It's a story that's like a month old or something. So you've already gotten your paper this week. You probably noticed it. So Brandon, you can give your
Yeah, let me go ahead and explain that. So, so our design people keep the editions that after they design them for a little while, and they kind of use them as a template. They're like, "Ooh, I like this one." And depending on what photos I send them with the stories, they might say, "Okay, I'm going to use the same design." And every now and then, in fact, week before last, I caught a story that where the headline had changed and the photos had changed. But then I started looking at the story. I'm like, and I forget what it was, what the headline was, and what the story that was still there was. I was like, these don't go together. This other story is from like 3 weeks ago, so they had to go back and change it. Well, this past week, I told you off air before we started recording that I went into Tuesday morning. I get to city council at 9 o'clock. And I've got like 18 stories I've got to get written before we can put this paper to bed. Ideally, we're putting the paper to bed Tuesday night, early Wednesday, but because of a bunch of different things going on and me needing to write 18 stories and 30 in ASAP, we got it rushed off Wednesday night as I was sitting above the tornado shelter waiting to see if anything was about to blow my house away. So didn't really take as much time to edit, and now I'm having to pay that price. But we'll actually run the Capital Talk story next week, so that people can read about what happened.
Yeah, so maybe we won't scoop ourselves? Do you
No,
want to
that's
go ahead?
fine. I mean, because it's been online for
Okay, that's true.
nearly a week now.
So what are some things that stood out in that meeting?
Well, honestly, Johnny Shaw was the one who did most of the speaking of substance in this one because he got a lot of the questions.
Okay.
And the main topic of discussion was one where if you turn to page 7 in this edition of the paper, there's a faith column about this from Sabrina Parker. She was there and asked Johnny about this, as well as County Commissioner Sheila Godwin, pretty much asking, hey, all three of y'all voted to allow predatory lenders to increase their interest, I think, to 36%. Why would y'all vote to do this? And let me say at the beginning that I disagree with what Johnny said. I'm sorry, Representative Shaw. I disagree with what he said. But he made a decent argument for it. And essentially, he said, I cover District 80. I represent District 80 in Nashville. Some of Jackson and southern part of Madison County, just about all of Hardeman County, except for uh, the highway corridor at the very right above the Mississippi state line, and a big chunk of Haywood County that involves Brownsville and Stanton. There are a lot of people in those counties that are unbankable, is what he said. And he said, so if they need a $500 check to cover the house note this month, or they're going to get evicted, they can't go to the bank and take out a loan to do it because they're unbankable. Do we let them get foreclosed on and become part of the homeless community? Or do we give them another option, being this? And he didn't say necessary evil, but he kind of framed them as one to keep them from worst case scenario becoming homeless. And he said, if we do that, they've got to make their money too because their costs are rising. They're having to deal with inflation as well and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's why I voted to do that, and pretty much Ed Jackson and Chris Todd sat there on either side of him, pretty much nodding their head in agreement with it. And so, and I don't think that satisfied Commissioner Godwin or Miss Parker, but that was the explanation he gave.
Okay. I can follow the logic. I just 100% disagree with it, which doesn't matter because I didn't say I was going to opine on anything, but I guess I can get that logic. So that was was that the main point of discussion or whatever? Did Todd talk about
Yeah,
his bill about the one gave the press release on a couple weeks ago at all?
he did not. He meant to, and then he kind of discussed it when he and I were talking after the meeting. We talked about a bunch of stuff after the meeting. What was the one? Illegal immigration?
Yeah, it essentially, well, I think it added a smuggling to trafficking. Honestly, 80% of the bill makes sense. It's just the addendum on the end that would be a misdemeanor and $1,000 fine for anyone who knowingly aids someone who
Mm,
is. And the language of legal and illegal isn't even accurate, right? There is no, you have documented or people who are on pathways to citizenship, right? Like there's
right.
a lot of different avenues for this kind of stuff, and so even the language in the bill made this seem a lot more like cut and dry than the reality. I think there are just a lot more questions about it. So I don't know if he mentioned that at all.
He, I think that was. I think I wanted to ask him about it, and when he and I were talking, we were there for about an hour after it was over. But it was a group of about 6 or 7 of us who were all there. A lot of that discussion was on other stuff having to do with the other 5 people who were there, part of the circle. So I'm just kind of sitting there, just kind of listening, taking it in. Plus, we were kind of off the record too.
Gotcha.
But he did explain because one of the things I asked, I said, I'm seeing something about all the Republicans being in favor of um, pesticide companies and trying to protect them. And he explained the bill that it was going through the Senate that week. I'm not sure when it will or it did go through the House. But he said pretty much all that was. He said it's not to it's not protecting the pesticide makers. It's about protecting the farmers who use them, because pretty much if a warning is not put on a label, because the FDA or whoever says you don't need that label put there, then you can't be sued for what's not on the label. And apparently that's happening to farmers. And so that's them, according to him, that's them protecting the farmers, not protecting Monsanto or whoever.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't been paying too much attention to that one. Staying on the political track, but bringing it more local, the local Democratic Party elected Kyle Lusby to be the president, leader,
Chairman.
What's the chairman? Okay, chairman. Yeah, I sort of know Kyle. I like Kyle. I think he's a good person to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I was a long time ago, like 2005, went to a few of the local Democratic Party meetings here. I did not have a great experience, and just wasn't organized very well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an understatement. And so I never really got involved, even though people say that I'm a Democrat or a liberal or a socialist or whatever. I've never been active in the local Democratic Party or even the state level or any kind of level Democratic Party. And that was
other than just hating the Republicans.
Yeah, I'm not even a Democrat. I just don't like Republicans, right? Like that's my political philosophy. I don't, Democrats are just whatever. I don't have any kind of affinity or dislike for them. It's just the other side.
Han Solo wasn't a Jedi either. He just fought with them.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that analogy. But in all seriousness, I think I like Kyle. I think Kyle will be good. I don't just not to make this like hyper political or opinionated. I don't know what the Democratic Party is going to do on the national level, on the state, like the local level. I just think there's a lot of stuff they got to figure out.
Well, I mean, they got to figure it out at the national level and then work their way down to the local level. And maybe what happens is somebody figures it out at the local level and it works. And everybody's like, what is this group doing? Oh, this is what they're doing. Then maybe we should do this on a larger scale. I can tell you right now. I mean, I thought I gave serious consideration about who to vote for last November for president. And when it came down to it, the Democratic messaging to me, a voter, a father, a husband, a person with a job who's, I don't buy eggs that often, but I buy cereal and I buy milk, and milk hadn't gone up that much, that bad, although it's like $5 a gallon now. What really, about the time that everybody started having their fit about how much eggs were going up, I was like, whoa, when did Raisin Bran become $9 a box? So, and the Democratic messaging was not speaking to me about that. It was speaking to me about what they wanted to speak about. Whereas, like them or not, the Republican messaging and the messaging by our president, he was meeting the voters where they were, or did a better job of meeting the voters where they were in their messaging. Did he do it with the greatest or the most mature conventional way of doing that? Not all the time, but he still made sense and kind of rang some bells with me that the other side didn't ring. And apparently he did the same thing with the majority of the voters in all 7 swing states too. And so if I'm the Democratic Party national chairman, one, I should have been fired by now. Two, if I'm fighting for my job, I'm going to the board or whoever. I'm like, all right, let's take a couple of months. Let's just kind of sit back for a second. Let's just kind of see what's going on. Let's not be so reactionary to what the president's doing. Let's see what the people need. What are the people? And then maybe we need to go back to the old school ways that work for us. Even just because it's 2025 doesn't mean that the messaging that might have worked in 1976 when we got Jimmy Carter elected, we're not going to make the same points, but we may use the same strategies with what's going on today. And we'll see if it works, if they even try it.
Yeah, I don't want to wade too deep into the national political stuff. I
Right.
will say
I
this.
already did.
I will say this. I think every time I would like, I voted for Harris this year. I voted
Yeah.
for Biden in 20. I voted for Clinton. Whatever. It's just it's been Democrat all the way down the line for president. That being said, like I told somebody this the other day. This tariff thing, right? It happens to be tariffs, okay, but it's just a tangible example of chaos, right? Because that's who he is. Trump has displayed that. He displayed it all 4 years, but he had a lot more checks and balances, keeping him sort of grounded. After January 6th happened and nothing happened to him, it was free reign if he won this election. And he did, and now it is utter chaos. Now I'm not ready to like sound the alarm yet because I'm trying to take a very like panoramic view of this and
Hmm.
let this play out. But this like whatever is happening right now is absolutely unserious and chaotic. And I don't think like any kind of like success can happen from this unless something shifts drastically.
Hmm.
The second thing is I do think the Democratic Party's messaging like is really bad. And there's a lot of different tents within the party, and I think there's a way to take care of all of those tents, but we've got to be super focused on a lot of the people that Trump got to vote for him in 2016, which would have voted Democrat probably every election up until that point, right?
Right.
And we lost those. Like we lost the people that Bruce Springsteen wrote songs about in the 70s, and that was a big part of the Democratic Party then. And I think that you know the Democratic Party lost them, and it was their own fault.
Hmm.
So maybe Kyle Lusby's going to be the guy that gets them back on track.
Well,
Say that,
and to
Jason.
kind of yeah, and kind of steer the conversation back local. I mean, let's think about the Democratic. Let's look back at the recent history of the Democratic Party here in Jackson. I mean, the state party had to shut it down in what 2019 or early 2020, and so I went and covered the reorganization meeting in August of 20 that year, and that was when Larry Garrett was not Larry Greer was elected the chairman for the Democratic Party. Larry Garrett was my postmaster back home. Sorry, pretty sure he's dead now. Anyways, the but Larry, I had never met Larry, but he and I met that day. I did an interview with him, heard a little bit about his story. You know, he's a cancer survivor, very very compassionate guy. You know, and checks all the boxes for what you want in somebody um, who's leading your local chapter of your Democratic Party. Uh, he did a good job for the last 4.5 years of just kind of all right. We've got the chapter back organized again. This is the direction we need to go in. Let's support because at the time they were organized right in the heat of Trump versus Biden one or Trump versus Biden for 2020 president. Let's support Biden. Let's support the lady who ran for Senate from Memphis
Mm-hmm.
that year, who ran against Harry for the Senate. Let's support her. Let's get behind all the state candidates. Um, get behind the national candidates. And they did that. Let's get the vote out. I mean, how many events that would conceivably be handled by Democrat entities did you go to where there wasn't some kind of voter registration going on? I mean, a lot of people in Madison County, a lot of young people in Madison County are registered to vote now because of Larry Greer and the work that he led. And he did a good job of just maintaining, keeping the course, maintaining. Kind of like how when the University of Alabama football program had massive NCAA penalty infractions coming on them and bowl bans for 2 years and all this stuff, they just needed somebody to just come in, just calm everything down, keep it going. And they got a guy named Mike Shula that Alabama fans don't care for because he never did better than well he won 10 games one year, but he never beat Auburn. But he got him off of NCAA probation, and their compliance was perfect, spotless by the time he left. And then in comes Nick Saban and they win 6 national championships.
So you're saying Kyle Lusby will be Nick Saban and Madison
I was going
County
to
is
say
about to be Blue Wave. Blue Wave.
Kyle
That's what they
Lusby
say, right?
is going to run this thing, and in the next 17 years, he's going to win 6 national championships. And
I'm here for
there
it.
we go.
I may not move now. I may say, are you okay? You
Excuse
need
me.
that cat to give you the Heimlich.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe I should have brought some water over here to keep my mouth from getting dry. I'm not sure.
I lost my train of thought. I do believe that was the last story that we were going to cover before you keel over.
Yeah, good.
What do we have?
I had one of these fits there in city council the other day, and I got a text from someone sitting on the platform whose last name rhymes with Ronder. Said, dude, I'm trying to have a meeting over here.
It can be a little disruptive.
Yeah. Which, by the way, thank you for editing out all my coughs last week.
Yeah, just pushed a button. Did it edit it out? It did.
Apparently, because I didn't go back and listen, but I heard a person who has heard both of our previous 2 episodes said, "Hey, y'all are sounding good. This is a good podcast to listen to. Thank y'all for doing this." I was like, "Good." How bad is my cough? And he's like, "I don't remember you coughing."
Hey, the magic of AI on this riverside or whatever it is. What's coming up next week in the paper?
Obviously, we're going to have some flood coverage. A lot of roads shut down over the weekend in Madison County. So working on some
yesterday driving when they shouldn't have been.
Okay, so speaking of which, so people who are not friends on Facebook with Gabe and a member of his family decides to get out. Which, by the way, Carrie, my wife, saw this before I did, and before she even gave me a chance to read what it is, she said, "Gabe's an idiot." I said, "Hey, let's not talk politics, okay?"
Yeah.
No, I was like, why do you say that? And she said, "Just go read what he did this afternoon." So, you know what? You wanted some Popeyes. So,
well, my daughter did. It wasn't even me. I don't even like pickles. But it was funny because I did realize I should have provided some context for this because when we went, the tornado warning had been canceled. It was in that little stretch of, and then it was just kind of drizzling. We can do this, and we couldn't.
So was the wind blowing, or did the tree was just the soil wet around the tree and it couldn't hold it in anymore?
I think it was both because what we saw coming south on Highland around McDonald's, that Parkway intersection, was like just a dark cloud and what looked like something dropping from it, like a what would be a funnel cloud if it would have fully formed.
So you had already been to Popeyes and you were on your way home.
We were on the way home. Yes, I was like, we just got to make it home. And I crossed through the intersection at Parkway, and I'm kind of watching the trees, and I just see one really bending, and I'm like, it's about to fall. And for a second, I thought I'm just going to gun it and get under it. And then I thought that would be stupid. So I hit the brakes, and as soon as I came to a stop, it just right in front of the car. And then, of course, the power lines and transformers were sparking and around us, but we were out of there in 30 minutes, man. Like, seriously. And that's the main reason I made that post is because our first responders were so efficient, super fast. JEA was out there, killed the power to the power lines. It may have already been dead. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They came out there, got the power lines off the car. I backed out, and the only thing I got to do is duct tape my passenger side mirror.
Yeah, I haven't put anything up on JacksonPost.news yet because I know that all the crews and their leaders are all out working hard and stuff. I did text Madison County Fire Chief Eric Turner and EMA Director Jason Moore, just being like, "Hey, I'm putting something together for the website. Any kind of urgent info that people need to know." I think Chief Turner just said, just make sure that they know, have the updated road closing list before they head out to work tomorrow morning. I said, okay. But so I'm kind of hoping that everything will kind of calm down for them tomorrow or Tuesday, and I'll be able to have some longer interviews because I'm sure that there was some water rescues and stuff, and everybody's been going down to Selma helping with the cleanup down there as well. And then we had Wednesday night, the first night that this was dealing with, Carroll County. One of their linemen lost his life the other night. So thank you to EMS, fire, law enforcement, JEA, all the people that are that have, while everybody else is staying indoors, staying dry, and some of us are being idiots getting out. Let me drive through this flood. Thank y'all for doing the work that y'all do.
Yeah, it was. It is not work that I would.
I was not referring to you, by the way, guys.
No, but I referred to me that way. I think I used the word slightly irresponsible, something like that. But we're all good, and
yeah.
We got our pickles. So, all right, man, we'll be back same time next week. Maybe we'll go live so people can watch us in real time. If I can,
I'm up for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a cat cross in front of me tonight. Say the thing about Sunday nights is when we start at 9, it's like we're putting the babies down at like 8:58. So there may be some at the beginning of the live. There may be some crying in the background.
It's all right.
And so, as long as the people are okay with it,
it's all part of being behind the paywall, right?
Yeah, there you
stories. Go. It's real life. All right, man. See you next week.
Sounds good. See ya.